So there are many aspects of this film that are really unique, different tonal switches, and almost the opening shot feels, it's so weird. It's almost like a weird horror film. It's like these kids playing with a kind of making an effigy of, mocking Hitler, and one guy finds a rifle buried in one of the kids, in the sand, and they're all messing around, and it almost reminds me of the beginning of something like necromantic, weird horror film, horror, I don't know, cult film, Jörg Buttgereit or whatever, the German director. It's trippy. I don't know. There's just a weird vibe to it. That opening, just it's really interesting. And then this kid gets recruited to be a part of this group, and it just gets more and more fucked up along the way. And of course, you can't talk about this film and not talk about the really horrific demonstration of war atrocities, right? I don't want to get in. I want you to watch the film. I mean, you really should watch the film, but there is something in these. I mean, the Eastern Front was savage. I mean, what they did to each other, what they did to each other's citizens, and, when the Russians came back into Germany, I mean, it was horrific. I mean, people have no idea, just how devastating the war was, and now you can understand why the Europeans wanted as much as they can to avoid war at all costs. It makes sense. And you hear these people, and God love them, I have some friends I love, oh, peace, 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 peace. Gee, if you're so big on peace, how many lives do you think could have been saved in 38 and 37 and 36 had France and England and the United States really stood up to Hitler and avoided World War II? Hundreds of millions of lives. Isn't that peace? Oh, peace, peace, peace. I mean, these people who say that they have no education, almost none of them have a college degree. They know nothing of history. They just spout off stuff that they hear, and they don't give it any thought whatsoever, because they don't study anything. And that's why a film like this is so important to understand, what happened and how horrific it was, and how important it is to avoid again. The history sometimes doesn't just rhyme, it repeats. We're seeing it again. I'm not going to get into that whole trip, but, the scene, it comes at the tail end of the film, and it is so powerful, it's so intense, and yet it's not like a horror film, it's not like a, like you're seeing all this, carnage and explicit detail. It's just, they show you the basics and you get the rest, and it's just, many people, it's one of those films people say they can only watch once. For me, it's not quite that, but I mean, it does pack a very powerful punch. I cannot say enough things about this film to try and get you to see how important it was. I think this guy only made one film. Again, things like shooting the live rounds over that scene I mentioned earlier with the cow, and then I don't want to talk in too much detail about the end, but it is powerful, and it tells you, and it really drives home the futility. It doesn't matter how many each kills or whatever, it doesn't answer the question, right? It doesn't solve the problem. And it reminds me a lot of another film that a lot of people kind of shit on, which is Sophia, or Son of Saul, won Best Foreign Film, I think, in 2014. It's just great. So I think it's a master. Of course, there's a bunch of people who shit on it. I always have to bitch about something. I mean, I think it's a way, way better film about the Holocaust than Schindler's List, which is a wonderful film, but I mean, it's such a cop-out. The ending is so atrocious. I mean, Thomas Keneally, who wrote the book, was so appalled because the whole beauty of the story, the real story, was you don't know why Oskar Schindler did it. Did he do it, to save the Jews, or right? I mean, that ambiguity is the beauty of the story, and it's funny because Martin Scorsese was going to direct Schindler's List, and Steven Spielberg was going to direct Cape Fear. And when Marty said when he wanted to do Cape Fear, he wanted to make it more complicated and give the Nolte character, maybe he had an affair or something like that. This Spielberg was like, well, you just lost a couple, 100 million off the box office or whatever it was. He said, and Marty's kind of not a retort, but Marty said about Schindler's List, well, I can just say if I directed Schindler's List, it would not have won any Oscars. And what he means is like he would have gone all in. And not that it wasn't all in or that, Eamon Goat and all these were great, but the ending is so cheesy. It's a fucking embarrassment, How people can accept that, but shit on Son of Saul just makes no sense to me. But I think Son of Saul, and maybe I'll have to do a video essay on that film. It's about the Holocaust. It follows one guy who's, kind of a Sona commander, whatever. He's a Jew who is helping the Nazis, and he gets a few, treats or whatever, and then they try and escape. But it's like they put the camera over his here, and you're just walking through Auschwitz. It's unbelievable as a film, and to me, Come and See has many of those qualities. It's like what it's really like to be, in combat, or what it's really like to have fought in something like that. It's not everybody was at the huge battles, right? It's day by day by day, and to me that's what's the genius of this film. And again, how the citizens suffered, and there's just so many powerful things about it. I mean, it's only grown in time, it's just as relevant as when it came out. It came out in '85, and I think because there was still the, kind of the Cold War thing, it did well, but I think it's grown over time. You can see it on Criterion Channel, I believe, and a couple other outlets. But go out of your way to find this film. It's brilliant. You will not be disappointed, I assure you. It's a masterpiece. What can you say? The Russians have 2 films in the top 10 for me. This one, Come and See, and also Andrei Rublev, like Tarkovsky. I mean, they have tremendous culture, so please check out Come and See.